There was an idea that I came across a little bit a while ago, and it led to a little bit of controversy and to some hurt feelings on the part of some liberals. And I just thought it would make a good, I thought it would make actually a good video. When it comes to actually liberating the proletariat, and when it comes to actually getting the job done and producing results, there is very little that liberal ideology can claim that Marxism can. Basically, this came down to a discussion of which was actually better, intersectionality or dialectics. Now, intersectionality is a liberal idea which says that the various marginalized groups are also intersect with each other. Like you can be queer and black and indigenous and something else at the same time, etc. And that there are people that are multiple marginalized groups at once, which I don't think anyone actually denies this being the case. So you have these different groups, and in society, there are these different marginalized groups that require support, liberation, etc. And in Marxism, we would see these as various contradictions within capitalist society. So what you would have is, man, woman, queer, straight, etc. So you would see these as also existing, but not as seeing them the same way as you would see them in intersectionality, where they all just simultaneously exist on the same level or of the same existence at the same time. Allow me to try to explain that more clearly. Instead of seeing them as all existing simultaneously with the same energy or power, which intersectionality tries to see them as, we would see them through primary and secondary contradictions. Now, Marx did say that in the science of dialectics and understanding capitalist society, there are contradictions that are more powerful, more dominant than other contradictions. Obviously, for capitalism, that would be between labor and capital. That would be the primary contradiction. And then once you undid that contradiction, that would open up the possibility to take on other contradictions and to be able to resolve them. And that through the process of revolution and ongoing revolution and undoing more and more contradictions, that we would eventually get to the liberation of all peoples and all societies by taking on all of these contradictions, by opening up the conditions to be able to take them all on. Because I don't think it's anything really controversial to say that you are not going to get equality under capitalism. I'm sorry, but a system predicated on inequality, which uses inequality as its driving factor and which cannot exist without inequality, will not produce equality. So I think that should be pretty obvious to everyone. So in recognizing that, we would recognize that there are limits to what it is that you can struggle in terms of equality under capitalism. You can only take a queer struggle so far. You can only take the women's struggle so far. You can only take indigenous resistance so far under capitalism, because of the very limitations built into the mechanism of capitalism itself. To which I said, so you acknowledge that you are going to have to topple capitalism itself before you're going to have to be able to take on before you're going to be able to get true liberation for everybody. And they said, okay, yeah, but, well, of course, we have to do, your liberation has to come before ours, right? Oh, the cis white male's revolution has to come first. To which I was like, okay, well, there's two problems with that. The destroying of capitalism opens up the way for everybody else's liberation. So it's not the cis white male's revolution. It's opening up the door for everybody to have their revolution. So it's in everybody's interest to do so. So it's not the cis white male's revolution. Two, the point of primary and secondary contradiction is that it allows us to be able to do those things. So you're basically saying, okay, so push that all aside because anti-capitalist struggle is cis white male. So therefore it should be pushed aside for the other struggles which can't actually be concluded in capitalism. Here's the main point. Intersectionality is great for deconstructing things, but tell me what this liberal ideology has ever actually accomplished. What has it done in terms of actually materially improving anyone's life? Nothing. What is intersectionality's plan of action for actually undoing the contradictions, for actually producing change? It doesn't have one. Marxism, and specifically dialectics, actually produces a course of action in order to be able to produce change. The primary contradiction since the time of Lenin has been imperialism. You defeat imperialism, and then in each individual country, you can take on the battle of labor versus capital, which would become the primary contradiction after imperialism. And once that's been defeated, you have opened the door to be able to take on all the other contradictions in society, to be able to create that equality through socialism. Because now the base mechanism of inequality of capitalism has been gotten rid of. And the base mechanism of equality of socialism has been achieved. So now you can definitely bring through all those other liberations. Contrast this with what intersectionality proposes. What is intersectionality's proposal for bringing change? Nothing. It has no plan of action. It produces nothing in terms of any tangible plan for producing any kind of change. It's basically just sitting on the sidelines complaining. And then when you have something that actually can produce change, the science of, or at least pseudoscience of dialectics, it just sits there complaining about its ability to do something, and then instead insists that its own inability to do anything is superior. So that was basically the substance of the argument that I had. It was continuing to insist that intersectionality was better because all of the oppressions are considered equal, even though in terms of actually getting rid of oppressions, in terms of an actual plan to undo all these things, it is not practical in any way, shape, or form. It's not a plan of action at all. And that undoing primary and secondary contradictions is the only thing that has ever worked. Getting rid of these oppressions has never been accomplished in any other way other than undoing contradictions in the Marxist sense. Name one ideology that has ever had our success in undoing oppressions. None. No one has ever managed to have our level, to produce our level of equality between men and women since the time of tribal societies. Obviously, we can't just go back to tribal societies. We have to work within a modern context. Within the modern ideologies, nothing has been able to produce the equality that everybody claims that they want to have other than Marxism. And our science of revolution is the only thing that has ever accomplished that. And for intersectionality to stand on the sidelines gesticulating and calling it a cis white male ideology and inherently somehow oppressive because it doesn't place most marginalized groups as the absolute first and foremost is just complete nonsense. Sorry. This is kind of like a military tactic. if you do not place your primary military objectives first, your secondary ones will not mean anything. And that's exactly what a plan of action and actually accomplishing things are. You need a plan of action. And that is what the science of dialectics actually produces for us, which intersectionality does not. And that is why I believe competing or mutually influencing contradictions and dialectics in general is far superior than intersectionality. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.